Why has Apple CEO Tim Cook just received a massive $750 million bonus? If you ask most people what their impressions of Tim Cook were, many would probably respond that he lacks innovation, giving Apple's creative direction in recent years. But despite the public negative opinion of Cook, the financial performance of Apple since Cook took the reins really puts Cook's impact into perspective. When compared to the value he brings, even this enormous $750 million sum is too little, really. Since Apple announced Cook as their new CEO, Apple's stock price has risen by nearly 1,200%. In other words, more than 92% of Apple's current market value was created during Cook's tenure. If Apple founder Jobs created a vision, Cook turned the vision into a reality. So, why did Jobs choose Cook? What did Cook do to make Apple the powerhouse it is today? And does Cook really lack innovation? In today's video, we'll go over Cook's rise to prominence. Hey everybody, welcome to TechWick, your weekly source for the biggest tech stories right now. If you're new to this channel and like tech stories, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. The story starts about a decade ago. In 2011, Apple lost the world's most admired CEO, Steve Jobs. Although it was no secret that Jobs was severely ill, the abrupt death of the genius shocked the world, including Tim Cook. It was revealed in Jobs' biography that Cook, at the time of Jobs' passing, had officially taken over as CEO at the time. However, it was believed by most that Jobs, as a board member, would still guide product development beyond the scenes for a long time. Jobs' death suddenly brought in a host of problems for Apple they were somewhat unprepared for. Within the company, many were displeased with Cook's leadership style, and several senior executives chose to leave. Then, out in the world, Wall Street analysts and critics believed that Apple, along with Jobs, lost its soul and direction. They predicted that Apple would wither away. In fact, it was widely believed that Jonathan Ive, a design genius with a charming British accent, would take over as Apple's next CEO. So why did Jobs choose Cook? Because for Jobs, Cook was his most trustworthy partner, and Jobs believed Cook could take Apple in the right direction financially, even if Cook lacked the design background of Ivy. To understand Jobs' decision, let's take a look at Cook's journey before joining Apple. Cook was born in an ordinary working-class family in the United States South. In 1978, Cook graduated from high school and chose to study an industrial engineering degree at a local university. This major studies how to optimize complex systems and reduce resource waste. A lot of the degree's knowledge is related to production supply chain logistics. At the same time, most students preferred to study finance or law because of their high salary and social prestige. But it was this niche major that made Cook such a rare talent in his current industry of technology. After graduating from college, Cook went to work at IBM, which was at the height of its powers. In the early 1980s, IBM was the undisputed #1 computer company. Computers were sold by the minute, and the IBM supply always short due to high demand. But instead of joining a favorable department, Cook entered the personal computer, or PC department, which was just established at the time. Today, PCs are found everywhere, and essentially necessary for survival. But 30-40 years ago, the proportion of American households who owned personal computers was less than 10%, and everyone believed that computers were reserved for business use only. From an early stage in his professional career, Cook displayed the courage to brave the unknown. After joining IBM, Cook was responsible for supply chain management, which he studied in college. At the time, the U.S. manufacturing industry was influenced by Japanese cars, and all factories were implementing Toyota's just-in-time production concept. To summarize, in every part of the production process, parts were only to be delivered to the assembly line as needed. This way, factories could reduce waste, and the units produced matched the units needed. This method was efficient and also made quality control straightforward. Simultaneously, the just-in-time production method is only possible with great management and excellent teamwork. IBM especially needed cooperation on a massive scale because of the sheer number of parts a computer requires. It's very difficult to ensure that all parts can be in hand and on time as needed, and that no mistakes were made in the process. Against all adversity, Cook's leadership allowed IBM to successfully implement this production method. Cook became a leader in his industry. Then, in his off time, Cook studied for an MBA at Duke University, making up for his lack of knowledge in organizational management. Eventually, he would move into IBM's management team. Cook ended up working at IBM for 12 years and became the director of the PC business department. His talent in supply chain management made him a top talent sought after by dozens of tech companies. Eventually, Cook left IBM for Compaq, another computer production company. Upon joining Compaq, Cook was named vice president of the company. As VP, he carried out drastic reforms to the company's supply chain and implemented the just-in-time production method again to reduce costs. With the decline of costs, Compaq was able to fight a price war and expand its market share. They soon launched the world's first desktop that cost less than $1,000, bringing in billions of dollars in profit to the company. In order to cope with the price war, all of Compaq's biggest competitors had to adjust their production method to reduce costs. Here's where Jobs started to notice Cook. Through the introduction of friends, Cook and Jobs met each other in the late 90s, and they had a talk that lasted for hours. Jobs described the product he was planning to create, which clearly moved Cook, and even made Cook, who had just joined Compaq, immediately decide to join Apple. His friends and family thought he was crazy because Compaq was the world's largest computer company at the time, and Apple was on the verge of bankruptcy. Apple was a lost cause to the public at the time, and even Dell's CEO, Michael Dell, said publicly during a televised interview, "If I were the CEO of Apple, I would quickly auction off the company's assets and get some money back to the shareholders." But Cook joined anyways, convinced by Jobs' vision. But while Jobs is great at describing his ideas, it was Cook that would bring these thoughts to life. If Jobs is a genius in product design, Cook is a genius in management. He made two contributions that altered the course of Apple's trajectory: reduce inventory and reduce research and development costs. Before Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, the Apple crisis would be attributed largely to inefficient supply chain management. At the time, Apple insisted on customizing the design and production of its components. Although this move raised the bar for competitors, it also requires the company to market demand with extreme accuracy. This method is not flexible enough to cope with quick market changes. If the estimate is wrong, the inventory is then severely over or understocked, creating a substantial issue in either case. In 1993, for example, Apple overestimated market demand and overstocked its PowerBook laptops, which created huge losses for the company. 2 years later, Apple's new Power Mac was so popular that it received 150,000 orders during the pre-sale period. This time, however, Apple underestimated market demand, and production orders were too conservative, resulting in $1 billion worth of orders failing to be delivered. Upon his return, Jobs believed the key to Apple's future was a complete change to the company's style of operation and production. He appointed Cook to be in charge of Apple's supply chain management. Through outsourcing, Cook helped Apple solve the inventory problem and avoid both overstock and production delay. Under Cook, Apple linked production and manufacturing directly to consumers, improving efficiency. The most ruthless thing Cook did was bury the backlog of Macintoshes directly in the garbage dump. Apple hardly even mentions this matter now. It's too shameful and it's terrible for the environment. In 1998, 7 months after Cook joined Apple, the inventory period of products was shortened from 30 days to 6 days. The remaining Macintosh inventory fell from $400 million worth to $78 million worth. By the end of 1998, Apple had successfully turned losses into profits. Just the previous year, Apple's net loss was still at $1 billion. By 1999, Apple's inventory cycle had been shortened to only 2 days. By 2002, Cook's scope of responsibilities expanded, and it was necessary for him to lead both the sales and operations teams. 2 years later, he was appointed as the company's COO to coordinate the management of various departments. During this period, Apple's sales and management expenses fell from 20% of the company's revenue to only 13%. By the time Jobs died in 2011 and Cook officially became Apple's CEO, the expenses had stabilized at about 7% of Apple's revenue, a figure that stands to this day. Cook's strategy in supply chain management successfully helped Apple solve the core problem of a volatile inventory. Cook's second master plan was to help Apple establish a close supply chain partnership. This would reduce Apple's research and development costs extensively. At the time, Apple was still in its early stages of development, but Jobs already had bold ideas. He hoped to use highly automated factories to make products, and he did. Apple spent tons of money building a special advanced automation factory in the Bay Area in order to produce the first generation Macintosh. It worked, but unfortunately Mac sales simply could not cover the cost of the factory, and Apple failed to make ends meet. As a result, it faced the dilemma of bankruptcy. Cook's approach was quite different from Jobs's. He chose to outsource Apple's production to a third party. While business slowly resumed, Cook reached out to Foxconn, a third-party supplier in Taiwan. Many people think that Apple chose Foxconn just to reduce costs, but as a matter of fact, Apple took fancy to the Taiwanese supplier because Cook also liked Foxconn's flexibility, efficiency, and technology. When Apple selects suppliers, it considers the company's developmental prospects in addition to the prices. For Apple suppliers, it's not only necessary to meet the tech giant's demanding technological requirements, but also to show Apple its investment in new tech every year. Apple helps too. In fact, they will often send people to spot check and test the research and development results. Hence, a substantial portion of Apple's research and development funds are shared with the supply chain partner. This is exactly what Cook wants to see. Just how much of their R&D is outsourced? Well, did you know that Apple, as a global leader in technology, only spends 5% of its revenue on research and development? To put this number into perspective, compare it to Apple's marketing costs. Apple's annual marketing cost is more than twice that of research and development at 12%. But why are companies like Foxconn willing to do the hard work for Apple? The answer, of course, is Apple's widespread influence in our world today. Apple is undoubtedly one of the world's biggest brands, and suppliers understand that if their parts are being used for Apple products, then Apple will bring consistent revenue and prestige to their names. This incentive alone is sufficient for suppliers to invest in research and development and then provide the results to Apple. In addition, it's also believed that Apple is constantly changing its supply chain, and consequently its suppliers. Apple will not hesitate to remove any supplier that fails to meet its standards, especially when so many companies are lining up to have Apple as a client. And for any supplier that loses Apple's orders, it will inevitably suffer heavy losses. For a company like Apple, with such a large market value, innovation and change still expose the company to huge risks. They still need to execute these transformations with great detail and accuracy. This is what makes Cook such a suitable CEO for Apple. Just looking at his recent accomplishments tells you a lot about his efficiency as a CEO. The settlement with Qualcomm Century and the development of a disruptive M1 chip under Intel's nose were both game-changing. And in the past few years, iOS ecology has evolved to be a superior and complete system. The Apple Watch launched in 2015, AirPods in 2016, HomePod in 2018, and a variety of new services launched in 2019, including CreditWatch, streaming, games, and news integration services. Cook may not be the most creative CEO, but he is the most suitable CEO for Apple right now. That's all for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, please like and leave a comment. And be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to turn notifications on so you stay updated on the top tech stories of today.